And I have to believe, and I do believe, that there are Democrats out there who are horrified by that. Horrified by the fact that the people who carry their flag are willing to say these things and think these things out loud. And so we need to go on a rescue mission of the Democrat Party where we're going to restore it to the loyal opposition. And something that when they're in power again, we can be loyal opposition too. Something that resembles more like JFK versus Nixon as opposed to Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, right? Where there's more of an alignment. We're closer together. And the only way that's going to be affected is if the Democrats and Tim Walz right at the tippity top are completely and utterly defeated. The signal needs to be sent to their donors and to those who will lead their party in the future that this type of behavior will not be tolerated by the people of Minnesota.
Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Michele Tafoya podcast. Have you subscribed yet? It's very simple. Just click the subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening. You can subscribe and never miss an episode. I live in Minnesota, and it's interesting to me. The state I've been here for 3 decades, and the state has gone into the toilet. I blame a couple of things. I blame Tim Walz, who America knows now is the goofiest governor, maybe not the worst, because a lot of people are raising their hand to be the worst governor in America, but he's one of them, and he's goofy. So I like to talk to people here because I think this represents the bigger, larger picture in America. So today, Walter Hudson, he is a member of the Minnesota House of Representatives. And we're going to ask him about what he sees right now, because in Minnesota, much like in, America, the House is split right down the middle. It's even on both sides, Democrat and Republican. So how do they function? What do they do? What is this telling us? Do we see a shift in Minnesota ready to happen? Are people going to reelect Tim Walz? What's it going to take to get this guy the hell out of the governor's mansion? All of these things we're going to talk about, plus Charlie Kirk. He has some strong reactions to what he's seen in the wake of this, and the equivocations between the state senator Melissa Hortman, who was killed here in Minnesota, and Charlie Kirk, and where he disagrees with those equivocations. Very interesting conversation. I think Walter Hudson is an up-and-coming political star in Minnesota. He is our guest next. Walter, welcome. I followed you on X for quite a while. I'm glad I finally get to meet you and talk to you. Why don't you first enlighten me about your district? Who makes up the district that you represent?
Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate the invitation and finally connecting. My district is in the northwestern part of the Twin Cities metro. It's the towns are called St. Michael, Albertville, Otsego, Hanover, and Rockford Township. And it's kind of like the last outpost of the metro before you get into real Minnesota, right? So it's
what we call outstate Minnesota here in this state. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the area well. You've got outlets up there and stuff, and I've been to, track tournaments there, yada, yada. Track meets, not tournaments. How shameful for a sports reporter to make that mistake. It's amazing that you're conservative, you're a Republican, and so the people in your district, I mean, is it close? Is it a small margin, or is it very conservative? Okay, time for a little Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, where being right can get you paid. Now, you and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, like I said, if you make the right decision, could result in some cash monies. Now, don't miss any of the excitement this football season. I've really been enjoying this season. It's good to be right on Prize Picks, and so it's really easy too. Prize Picks, I have the app on my phone. I'm going to tell you how to get it in just a second. And all you got to do is pick more or less. Your choices are more or less. They give you a number on a player, and you choose either more or less. Let's talk about this one. DK Metcalf. Love this guy, DK Metcalf. A rushing and receiving touchdown, meaning he can catch one or run one in, and he's got to have at least one for you to go more there. So I'm going to go more. All right, so there's DK. TJ Watt. Well, let me go to another team instead of just all Pittsburgh. Jamar Chase with Cincinnati. I just don't know how I feel about Cincinnati right now, so I'm going to dodge that one. Trevor Lawrence. Jacksonville's kind of the buzzworthy team right now. Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback. More or less than a half a passing touchdown. I'm going to say more. I'm going to say he gets at least one. That's more than a half. There you go. Let's see. Jamar Chase again, Joe Flacco, Aaron Rodgers, Cam Scatabo, Jalen Warren, Baker Mayfield, the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What a season he is having. He plays Monday Night Football, 234 and a half passing yards, more or less. I'm just going to say less. Watch, he'll go off and have a night. I'm going to say less. I'm going with it. Those are my 3 picks. Simple as that. There's my lineup. Super easy. It's simple to play, like I said. And a couple new features. Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. So if you want to pick more on Josh Allen's pass yards, rushdowns, and touchdowns, you can pick all of them in the same lineup. That is only on Prize Picks, and that's new. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code Michele with 1 L, Michele. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Michele, Michele, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it is good to be right. You're conservative, you're a Republican, and so the people in your district, I mean, is it close? Is it a small margin or is it very conservative?
For the time being, it's a nice solid red district, 65-35, and the surrounding districts are as well. It doesn't take long going to the east towards the cities before it starts to shift pretty blue, but it's still red out here.
How do you explain to people outside of Minnesota, is it just the big city phenomenon, Walter, that you see in so many states?
Yeah, absolutely. Like every state, you look at the map and the geography is overwhelmingly red, but it's the people are in the cities and the cities are overwhelmingly blue.
Right, right. Why did you want to run for office?
Well, I've always had a passion for individual rights and for looking at how government impacts people's lives. And up until a few years ago, that mainly played out in doing what you do, in commentary, right? Whether it was writing online or broadcast, radio, podcast, that sort of thing. And of course, when you work in this space, as you well know, you become in contact with folks who are elected or in part of the party. And so I got to know how the system works. And so when the 2020 census came and went, and they redrew the maps, and I knew those maps were coming, I suspected that an opportunity might present itself, and so it did.
It's interesting. I've been told that people run for office for one of 3 reasons. They like the celebrity, they want power, or they want to serve. And it sounds like you want to serve. You want to influence. What have you seen from the Minnesota Assembly? Do we call it the Assembly in Minnesota? We did
House
in
of
California.
Representatives.
Okay, House of Representatives. That is encouraging to you right now. I know the margin there is incredible. Is there even a like? What do you face every day when you try to get things done in St. Paul?
Well, right now we're in a historic situation where we're in an even split tie. So we have 67 Republicans and 67 Democrats, which has only happened one other time in the history of the state, and that was back when I was a kid, in like 1979 or something like that. And so it's been very, very unique. We basically had to make it up as we go along into how that was going to function, and and that happened under a great deal of drama. Yeah. Because there were special elections and the Democrats didn't show up for a month because they were trying to avoid us getting the speakership, and it's just been a mess. But it has also fostered the necessity to have to come together at some point, otherwise nothing gets done, and we had to pass a budget. So it's been this unique combination of vitriol and kumbaya. It's hard to describe.
Well, and in the midst of all that, Melissa Hortman, a Minnesota senator, was murdered, and I would imagine that resulted in some kumbaya. People are trying to compare that to what happened to Charlie Kirk recently. I think they're very different situations. They both ended in death, but people are trying to say President Trump, you lowered the flags for Charlie, but not for Melissa Hortman. How do you see that whole picture and that sort of trying to equate the two scenarios?
Well, listen, even if they had a point about the flags not being lowered for Hortman, which they don't, okay, because she, not to in any way disparage her, but her position, even as a longtime legislator and Speaker Emerita of the House of Representatives in Minnesota, that is not of national note. It's not. And so the idea that everywhere in the country we're going to lower the flags doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
They were lowered here in Minnesota.
Right, exactly. But even if they had a point, that doesn't compare remotely to the horrendous behavior and comments that we have seen, not just from yahoos in the street around the University of Minnesota, but from Ilhan Omar, an elected congresswoman, from Tim Walz, the governor of this state, from a dozen or more of my elected colleagues in the legislature who couldn't wait to dance on the grave of Charlie Kirk before Erica even had the chance to bury him. So I don't want to hear about flags being lowered. These people have been reprehensible for the past 12 days. And says it's not a conversation I'm even willing to entertain.
It's been awful. I didn't know that kind of hatred existed. I mean, I had some inkling, but some of the sources of that hatred, as you mentioned, some of these politicians, some of these people who are supposed to represent districts and areas and states and the United States, the best of us, are looking like the absolute worst of us. But you mentioned Minnesota and Charlie, and there was an event at the University of Minnesota. It went on as planned. It was, Charlie was supposed to be there with Michael Knowles. Charlie was not there. The empty chair represented him. But Michael Knowles came, and I was surprised that this event sold out at the extremely liberal University of Minnesota. I want to roll a clip, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Of her husband's killer. The state of Utah will inject poison into that killer's veins until he's dead. There is no contradiction between those two things. Christian forgiveness does not demand that we allow the cruel to ravage the whole earth. It demands that we love our enemies, and sometimes love is tough. In our personal lives, love means praying for those who persecute us. In politics, love usually means punishing the guilty, both for the protection of the innocent as well as for the good of the criminals. No one benefits from crime, decay, and disorder. Not the rest of us, and not the criminals themselves.
The point, obviously, that he was making is that while, Erica Kirk went in front of the world and forgave the shooter, it doesn't mean he shouldn't pay consequences. This is a really core to Christianity. It seems like Christianity came under attack with Charlie's murder, and in the sentiments of people. This is a tough one, but we got to get it out there. There is a large Muslim population in the state of Minnesota. Ilhan Omar doesn't represent that population well. She is a very spiteful, and in the wake of Charlie's death, hateful soul. And I just wonder where Minnesota goes from here, because we also have a guy running for mayor of Minneapolis who is Muslim and who espouses much of the same ideology.
Well, I'll tell you, I put a lot of thought into this. I worked with the Republican Party of Minnesota for a handful of months last year, and a lot of what I was doing was engaging with the Somali community and engaging with, developing constituency groups, right? People who aren't voting for us now, but they might vote for us later. And that was one of the top ones. And what I found was actually quite astounding in terms of the degree to which there's a lot of what I would call redacted stories. So I think one of the best weapons when Trump talks about the fake news, one of the best weapons that the left has is keeping the world from knowing what's actually going on in communities. So whether you're talking about North Minneapolis or you're talking about the Somali community or wherever the case may be, I sat down and had dinner with a number of Somali community leaders, and without me prompting them at all, they ticked off their issues as school choice, public safety, economic freedom. I mean, it's like I was listening to a Tea Party meeting, right? In terms of like the things that they want, which raises the question, well, then why are you voting for the people who will never give you any of that?
Right.
And the answer to that question is two things. Number one, the Democrats got to them first and lied to them about us and told them that we hate them and want to see them all suffer. And number two, they figured out a way to identify influential people within the community and ensure that they got rich. And that's where all this fraud is coming from.
We got to get to fraud. It's been rampant under Tim Walz in this state, and it is stretched into all kinds of different areas of the government. So you're asserting here that people on the Democrat side, what we call the DFL in Minnesota, enrich these people in order to keep them as voters. Not that that's uncommon, but this has been exposed, right? So where did it start? How long are the tentacles? Are there still other shoes to drop? I realize I just asked you 3 questions in one.
There's tons of other shoes to drop. And it's been my frustration for months that they haven't dropped, because there are people who know where the bodies are buried, and they've been having conversations with some very influential folks, and I'll leave it at that, and shoes should be dropping. So the names of folks who should be falling like dominoes are not insignificant. So a reckoning is coming. The question is, how long is it going to take?
Well, we've got a governor's election, a gubernatorial election coming up, and Tim Walz is he's running again for a 3rd term. My God, he's got a neutral, meaning a 0 net approval rating right now. 47 approve, 47 disapprove, and the other bunch is doesn't know. I can't imagine how 40% of Minnesota could possibly approve of the job that Tim Walz is doing, given all of this. Maybe they're not getting the stories that you're talking about, this fraud, and he is calling all of his opponents Trump wannabes. He's painting them with the MAGA brush, etc. I know most of these candidates. I know you do too. They are good, well-meaning individuals who want to save this state, because this state has really suffered tremendously under Tim Walz. So do you think, given what you're saying and what you're hinting at, that there are some not insignificant names associated with this fraud, that they're going to try to keep this under wraps through the election so that Walz can get reelected without any punishment?
I think there are I don't want to get too much into my suspicions of specifically what it might be motivating the delay in the shoe dropping that I keep referring to, but I think it goes beyond just the political. There might be some economic considerations. There might be some other things that it's hard to get inside people's heads, but suffice it to say, getting the truth out promptly doesn't seem to be the motive of this particular situation. And I suppose, the other thing that could be happening is perhaps in coordination with federal authorities, they're holding back in order to maintain the operational security of an investigation. I don't know. Could be.
Interesting. How do we get Walz out of office? How do we change the tide here?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because I've been putting a lot of thought into it, and I think it's actually relatively easy. First of all, you need to have an inspirational opponent who is going against him, somebody who can go toe-to-toe rhetorically, somebody who can hold their own on the debate stage, and somebody who doesn't need to pause and think before they respond. Somebody who comes across as a better leader than he does. And
that shouldn't be hard.
Well, sure. And then there are 2 things that person needs to run on primarily. One is the fraud. The fraud is just beyond the pale. And it all happened under his watch. And it's insane that he's seeking a 3rd term after having held responsibility for letting that happen. And then the second thing is this: after Charlie Kirk and the response that we saw, that Tim Walz was a part of, this abhorrent demeaning of a husband and father before his families had the opportunity to put him in the ground. It's horrifying. It's very clear that the social contract has been broken, that we can't presume that the people who we elect to office or who educate our kids or who perform our medical procedures are decent human beings who don't want to see us dead and wouldn't dance in our graves. And I have to believe, and I do believe, that there are Democrats out there who are horrified by that. Horrified by the fact that the people who carry their flag are willing to say these things and think these things out loud. And so we need to go on a rescue mission of the Democrat Party where we're going to restore to the loyal opposition. And something that when they're in power again, we can be loyal opposition too. Something that resembles more like JFK versus Nixon as opposed to Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, right? Where there's more of an alignment. We're closer together. And the only way that's going to be affected is if the Democrats and Tim Walz right at the tippity top are completely and utterly defeated. The signal needs to be sent to their donors and to those who will lead their party in the future that this type of behavior will not be tolerated by the people of Minnesota.
Is it too early for you to endorse a particular candidate?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the field is, and I'm in contact with, a number of them. And the consensus seems to be that the field has not yet been set. So I will tell you, I mean, I could do a little ranking if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do a ranking because
Sure.
we've got Kendall Qualls who ran and lost in the, didn't get the party endorsement, which I hate the endorsement process, Walter. It hurts us here in Minnesota. I think it's lousy. And I've talked to Kendall and he has said that even if he doesn't get the endorsement, he's going to run in a primary. Bravo. I've had Kristen Robbins on this show. I'm going to have every candidate on this show. We know about Scott Jensen. Right now, he's sort of got, if you were to poll Minnesotans right now, he probably has a slim lead because people know his name. Jeff Johnson, and then Mr. Parrish, whose first name is escaping me now.
Yeah, so, I mean, recognizing that, we're playing the game of if a gun was pointed to your head, how would you rank them? I would say the top at this point is Kendall Qualls. I've sat down with him. He understands the assignment. He knows what time it is. He gets the dynamics of where the party is at and, more specifically where it's not, and what's required of a campaign in order to fill that void. Next on the list would be Kristen Robbins, friend of mine, worked with her on the fraud committee. She would do a tremendous job as governor of the state of Minnesota. She's going to have to get a little bit more fire in her belly in order to take on Tim Walz and the public. Yeah. Next on the list, I guess, would be giving good old Scott Jensen another shot. I don't see that happening, to be completely honest, and that's no disparagement of Scott. He's somebody who I appreciate a great deal, and we've had some wonderful conversations, and I love seeing him at events and whatnot. And that's kind of where the list ends. The Johnson guy, I am teed up to connect with at some point, but the fact that I don't know who he is and have never met him before is not a good sign.
Not a good sign, right?
And Phil Parrish, it's the opposite. I know him quite well and know him enough to know that he's not going to go anywhere.
Not going to go anywhere. Yeah, it's an interesting field. I'm with you on Kendall. I've always supported Kendall. I was sort of an honorary member of his campaign the last time until the powers that be in Minnesota found out that I happen to be a pro-choice, not a pro-abortion, a pro-choice Republican. They wanted me out of the picture, and so I was cut out of the picture. I think, though, that Kendall does have an inspirational story to tell. I think he's very likable. I think those two things really matter, and his experience in business and in the military make him very appealing. I wouldn't mind seeing him and Kristen Robbins on a ticket together. I think that would be really powerful. Because he does have the fire in his belly, I think, to take on Walz. Walter, I guess, how do you not, I want to finish with this, lose hope and perspective and the will to when you're facing the things that we're facing in America? Or have I just inundated myself too much in the negative and I'm not seeing the positive?
Well, listen, I'm not going to lie. I have seasons of despair, and certainly the last couple of weeks after Charlie was one of them, where you are even a cynical activist like me who's seen it all, right? Looks at the response to the death of Charlie Kirk and says, "My God, I had no idea how horrific my opponents are." And that's after having a front row seat to the passing some of the most horrific policy that we've seen in this state. And so, yeah, there's seasons of despair, but what keeps me going, that memorial for Charlie on Sunday, I watched the whole thing from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable. You're talking about the biggest tent revival this world has ever seen. You're talking about the entire executive branch of the federal government, every single one of them getting up on stage and proclaiming the name of Jesus Christ. That's what gives me hope, is that God is still on the throne. Nothing is slipping past him. He's a goalie with a 100% record, right? And from our perspective, yeah, things are rough and atrocious. Thing is, we don't know how. We only see the surface. He sees the whole thing. He knows the whole iceberg, and he hasn't given up. And his task to us is to not give up either. Do not despair. Do not be afraid. I am with you. That's the reason why I stick it out.
I'm inspired by you in that I think that you have a really nice future in public service. I was going to say politics, but I'm tired of that word because it dredges up so much, of the antagonism that we see in the public square these days. So I'm just going to say in public service. And I support you, and I hope you stay with it. He's Walter Hudson. You can find him. We've been showing you where you can follow him, etc. And thank you so much for your time. I end every podcast just saying, be brave and do good. I think it's really brave to run and serve in public office, run for and serve in public office. And you're doing good every step of the way, Walter. Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, you can keep up with the Trump administration when you subscribe to the Trump Report. It's an email that brings you daily highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Subscribe today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.